problem with Roswell and a lot of these big cases is that they just fall apart in front of you, and they often demonstrate the same things, that at heart there seems to be a story that's credible, and you could say that certain things happened without a doubt. The more people that come on board, the more they start to contradict each other, and the more, if you actually use a spreadsheet to put the details together, the more there are little contradictions or just doubts all the way along the line. I mean, a simple thing with Roswell, which Carl Flock points out, is that a lot of the descriptions of certain places and certain things that happened are just provably false. The medical building at Roswell that people describe in the eyewitness accounts does not tally with the photographs. It's the actual building was much more a prefabricated structure, much smaller than is described. Yeah, and so I have a problem with those, in that I don't doubt that people come forward with unusual stories, but certainly the big ones, and my decades of sort of involvement in this, ufology has produced a number of spectacularly successful cases that have spawned books, and they've been celebrated at conferences. And if somebody was coming into it new, they wouldn't know about this, but they can Google them, and you just, the MJ12 documents, the Botswana sky crash, Roswell to a certain extent, if you look at them, some of these great cases that were going to change the world have just crashed and burned to the point where they're irretrievable now. Yeah, the alien autopsy, for example. So the last proper big UFO conference I went to, Stelios, I can't pronounce his second name, it's like a Greek Cypriot second name, but he's one of the two special effects guys who faked it. This is the point, and he now does the rounds explaining how he did it and bad mouthing Ray Santilli, who's still making money off the video regardless of the fact that it's disproven. So sorry, I'm rambling all around, but I have a problem with some of the big cases, in that I think that if you strip them down, you often see the same pattern. You see certain facts that are provably true, which are enigmatic and a bit strange, and they're not easy to explain, at which point a whole big story gets spun around them, and then it grows just organically because certain people come on board to claim things, which means therefore I'm a little bit distrustful of these big cases. And I'm sorry, but where Roswell's concerned, I actually think, I believe the Project Mogul thing. I find that the most credible, because another one of the books, which has got 3 authors, which again is never mentioned when they're, the kind of more spectacular documentaries are trying to sell themselves to TV. There's a book with 3 authors called The Making of UFO Crash at Roswell, The Making of a Modern Myth. One of the 3 authors is a guy called Charles Moore, who went on to have a very significant scientific career. But just coincidentally, Charles Moore was a research student who worked on Project Mogul, right? Now, I struggled through his section of the book because bloody hell, he knows a thing or two about neoprene balloons, yeah? And more than you'll ever need to know. But I find it very convincing, and the story he tells is actually amazing, but it gets lost in the Roswell thing. Project Mogul was a top secret project. The point was to spy on the Russians using high-level balloons, right? And it was part of a kind of intelligence arms race. How quickly could we spy on the Russians with their nuclear tests? So it was going up against things that were more promising, like high-altitude spy planes, right? The main reason Project Mogul never went into mass use was that the U-2 spy plane beat it and was more effective. But they went from, in just a bit more than 3 years, from launching balloons that more or less crashed in sight on the eastern seaboard of America to the last flights. One of them came down in Norway. This was launched in America, right? So that's the whole Atlantic Ocean, and it's overflying the north end of Britain. And another one came down, I think, in Tunisia. Like, it got all the way from the USA to Africa, Wow. And this was to do with, Charles Moore tells you this story in this book, this little regarded book, but obviously as a researcher on that, he understood what they were doing. It was about, using the lifting power of trains of balloons. And I find that much more convincing. And